from the University of Toronto. With my colleague Eva Jurzik, we're going to present a case of transitioning from print to ebooks. This will be followed by John Vickery from NCSU, who will speak about assessing ebook packages over time. Okay. All right, I will give you some context to start with. So University of Toronto is a large research-intensive university in Canada. We have 3 campuses, with the main downtown campus housing graduate programs, professional programs, and many undergrad programs, with the 2 suburban campuses focusing on undergrad education. Together, we offer more than 700 undergrad programs and 200 graduate programs across the 3 campuses. The University of Toronto Library is a large ARL. We are one of the top-ranked academic libraries in North America. It's a very large and complex system. We have a central library system that has 18 libraries, providing 14 central services. For example, collection development, metadata services, IT, scholarly communication. Together with 26 other libraries in partnership, we provide service to the whole university. These libraries include the campus library, departmental libraries. Okay. So by the way, this photo is our wonderful Fisher Rare Book Library. In terms of holdings, our large monograph collection consists of 15 million items, including print and electronic. Our current materials expenditure in the Central Library is close to 32 million Canadian, with about 73% on electronic resources. When the Central Library licenses materials, it's available for everyone in the university. So over the years, we have built an excellent collection, and we want to continue to build a collection that provides comprehensive support for the research and teaching needs of the academic community. So for monograph, we took a gradual approach for the transition from print to e. So to support the wide range of programs, we often license a full ebook collection from the publishers directly. And at the same time, often we continue to purchase the print, especially for humanities and social sciences titles. But as studies have shown, transition from print to e in some of these disciplines is taking quite a long time. Often, if given the choice, users still prefer to both formats at the same time. We also understand most libraries simply do not have the budget or the space to continue to collect both formats comprehensively. Having the ability to acquire both formats is a luxury for us, and we understand that it will be less and less sustainable, affordable, even for those libraries like us who do have the means to do so at this point. So we had a unique opportunity. So our gradual transition allowed us to have the opportunity to gather some evidence about how the librarians and users choose when both print and electronic were on offer. Okay. So in the 2015 Charleston conference 3 years ago, we presented a case where we shared a study of user format preferences when we had both formats, when we bought pairs of books. Today, we're going to share data of a different case where we see how librarians and users choose to purchase and use monographs when they had the opportunity to choose the print. Okay. So close to the end of 2016, we bought a large collection of ebooks from Taylor & Francis. It's over 45,000 titles. They cover mostly Routledge imprint, including some psychology press imprint as well. Also, at the same time, we're committed to purchase frontlist titles, ebook titles, in the forthcoming years. Those were titles in humanities, social sciences, and mostly for undergrad reading level. So it's applicable and will be potentially of use for all 3 campuses. So subsequently, we gave our subject selector the responsibility to decide whether they want to continue to purchase the print of the frontlist titles. Some chose to select those, and the others chose to continue with their approval plan if falls into their LC classes. So regardless, they made the selection choices. So now I'm going to turn over to Eva, who will share what questions we asked, what data we gathered, and what we have learned.
So in looking at the data, we were looking to examine 3 questions. The first is, how did the pattern of print purchases in the library change after we made the large frontlist and backlist ebook acquisition? How were the ebook and print titles used, and how did that use vary by subject? And lastly, based on the usage data we gathered, which subject areas should the library continue to purchase in print, and how did the existing print purchase pattern align with how the print collection was currently being used? So for the first question, how did the pattern of print purchases in the library change after that acquisition? For the study, we looked only at the imprint years 2014 to 2017. So the years that you see here represent the imprint year of the books, not the year that the book was purchased by the library. And this graphic looks at what percentage of all Routledge books the library purchased in print. The way we measured that, we had to sort of hobble together the data. So because we knew that we had attempted to purchase every ebook that they made available, we used the number of ebooks we had in our collection as a proxy for what the publisher actually put out. And for our print holdings data, that came from our catalog, and we were looking at our entire library system, not only our central library. What we didn't consider was number of copies purchased. So we know that across our system, there's often duplication, multiple copies of single titles are purchased. We didn't look at this. We didn't look at that in this case, but we know if we had looked at copy data, that would impact too. So what we see is that in 2014, a couple years before that big ebook acquisition, we were buying about 52% of what the publisher put out in print. And by 2017, we were purchasing just under 20% of what they put out in print. So there's a clear decline over the 4 years of what was purchased. So here's the same data, but we're looking at it numerically. Again, this number does not consider multiple copies of single titles. In terms of actual numbers, in 2014, we purchased about 2,200 of the titles in print, and by 2017, we were purchasing 772 titles. So the reason that the 2016 number is so low, despite the fact that we made the ebook purchase right at the end of 2016, we think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is that in anticipation of this ebook purchase, selectors could already have begun to adjust their behavior, but also more simply, our fiscal year doesn't align with the calendar year. And so if a 2016 book was made available close to the end of the year, maybe not made available in print by 2017, our selectors already knew what was happening and were already adjusting their behavior in that way. So again, the same data, the percentage of the collection that were purchased in print, but now broken up by subject. And to get these subjects, we took the Taylor and Francis assigned subject categories to the ebooks and mapped them against our print using the the ISBN. We removed any subject areas for which we purchased fewer than 150 titles in print over the 4 years, because we found that just small variations and little things would make the data look crazy, and it wasn't really representative of what was happening. So generally what we're seeing is most subject areas hew to the total collection. There's a gradual decline over the 4 years. But when you look at specific subject areas more closely, you see things that begin to look interesting. So in the case of psychology, Asian studies, and law here, we saw a very sharp reduction. So we looked at the overall publishing output in these categories to see, was the publisher just putting out fewer titles those years? Was there a massive change in how many titles they put out? No, it had remained pretty steady, so that wasn't it. But the selectors in these subject areas had made reductions in their print purchases that was far more drastic than their peers. So law and psychology reduced print purchases by about 85%, and Asian studies reduced print purchases by about almost 90%. So these aggressive reductions are likely a result of the desire to be responsible stewards of university resources, because there's numerous studies that have pointed to the fact that when the e-collections are made available, print circulation of their counterpart declines. But in other subject areas, we saw something quite different. Media and communications reduced their reduced their purchases by 26%, so they're still purchasing about 40% of the collection in print. Economics reduced by 28%, so they're still purchasing about 37% of the collection. And environment and sustainability actually only dropped by 25%, and they're still purchasing about 50% of the total collection in print, so quite a bit. I should point out that the 2016 dip is actually a human factor. We had a selector who was on a research leave, so that low number that you see is probably a result of that. And the 2016 number for those subject areas would likely be more in line with what you see for 2017. So why the trend in these subject areas? Why does it look different from the overall collection? There's a 2018 Kent State study that shows high print usage in the social sciences, as does a 2014 study of the Duke Books collection from South Carolina. So we're wondering, does the decision to continue to heavily purchase in print in these areas, is that supported by data at our own institution? So then we began to look at print circulation. So question number 2, how are the ebook and print titles used, and how did that use vary by subject? So as a whole, the whole collection from the 2014 to 2017 imprints, about 5,600 books, about 20% of those circulated in 2017. And when you break that down by subject, some of the findings are quite predictable. So philosophy, for example, those titles still circulate really well in print. 32% of the collection circulated in 2017. And it's long been said, as in a 2015 white paper, Global Trends in Ebook Usage, that ebooks are an inadequate format for immersive reading in subjects such as this. So maybe that's what we're seeing. What's also known but less frequently discussed is the possibility that users are going to prefer print formats when relying on books for their visual components. And that's one possibility for why the titles in architecture circulated, why 35% of that collection circulated in 2017. What was surprising looking at that data wasn't what was used in print format, but what wasn't used. So in terms of print circulation in 2017, economics, history, and literature, those titles all saw less than 15% of the collection circulate in print in 2017. To more accurately explore print format preferences across subject areas, the library looked at relevant usage. So that's the proportion of use generated by each subject compared to that subject's expected use. So relative usage factor compares actual use to expected use to determine whether books in a given subject are used or circulate more or less than an expected value. So for example, a subject representing 25% of the titles in a collection is expected to generate 25% of the use of that collection. And that would result in a relative usage factor of 1. Where usage is lower or higher than expected, the amount of relative usage diverges from 1, and that indicates the percentage at which a subject is over or underperforming. So you'll see here the axis is on the 1, and the subject areas that are closer to 1 are the ones that are performing about how we would expect them to perform. And the further you get away from 1, either to the negative or to positive, are ones that are not behaving as we would expect them to perform. So when you look at it this way, it actually shows how stark the difference in subjects like philosophy and architecture is, with architecture books circulating about twice as much as we would expect them to. And then the same visual highlights the other end of the spectrum with economics, history, business and management, literature print titles, all of which are circulating about 3/4 as much as we would expect them to. So when you're looking at this, one of the questions asked is, well, how does this relate to the value of the collection for us at all, for us overall? The modest use of the print collection shouldn't suggest that the books were not well used by the U of T community. Of the electronic collection, over 40% of the books were used in 2017. A surprise in the ebook usage was which books were heavily used. The philosophy, religion, and history collections all saw about 50% of the collection used in 2017, despite the fact that those subject areas are associated with a type of immersive use that we often associate being better suited for the print format. There's also some suggestion in the literature that electronic use is driven up when users use ebooks to see if they want to eventually use the content in print, in effect using the ebooks for discovery. So we wanted to see if this claim held up to scrutiny. we investigated the relationship between print and electronic use, and the answer was, well, no, not really. Of the 5,600 titles we purchased in the 4 years, just 715 of those books, so about 12%, were used in both formats. We ran correlations to see if there was a relationship that we could find at the subject level, and the answer was no, not really. In some subjects, there was at best a very weak correlation. So it suggests that that claim doesn't hold up, at least for this large group of books, that the users of books in print and the users of books in digital are either separate users, or the types of books are driving users to the different formats. So having looked at all that, we go back to our third question. Based on the usage data, which subject areas should the library continue to purchase in print? And does our existing print purchase pattern align with how the print collection is currently used? So on the aggregate level, the answer is yes. We've done a pretty good job of adjusting our behavior to match the behavior of our users when it comes to the print and digital formats. And I should say all of this print purchase decisions are based on numerous factors. Usage and circulation is just one. But it's powerful evidence to consider, so it's certainly worth thinking about. Where we did see the possible need for adjustment was at the subject level. And I hope you will indulge a Goldilocks metaphor. So in architecture, it looks like this chair is too hard. Before the eBooks purchase, the library was purchasing a large proportion of the books in print, about 60%. And now we purchase less of it as a percentage than the total collection. We're only purchasing about 14% of it in print. That's despite the fact that the architecture titles, as we saw before, are used at a rate much higher than the rest of the collection, suggesting that print purchases in this area might actually need to be ramped back up. On the other hand, in literature, the chair might be too soft. The selectors made only minor adjustments to their print purchasing pattern. They're still purchasing about 34% of the total collection in print, duplicating the electronic copies that are already in the collection. That's much higher than the 20% of the overall collection that we're purchasing in print. So they're really diverging from their peers here. And that's despite the fact that the literature titles, and I should say that these aren't works of literature, they're works about literature. So this isn't, Jane Austen, which I agree is much better in print. So these titles circulate at a rate much lower than the overall collection. It's possible that an argument can still be made for why we should be purchasing these titles in print, but at the very least, it should be looked at closely. And lastly, we have the law collection, for which the chair is just right. They seem to have struck a successful balance. The rate of purchases has come down gradually, right in line with the full collection. And the rate of print circulation for the law collection is exactly in line with the full collection, with about 20% of those titles circulating in 2017. So this is all very new. We're only looking at 1 year of data, and I think what we found was useful to us, but there are certainly limitations. We know that the print and electronic copies don't become available at the same time, and that the time of availability might have impact on how a title is used in a given format. Electronic usage measured by clicks and download, we know is not at all comparable to print circulation. Our system severely limits the circulation data that we have available, and that limits what we can study. We only looked, as I said before, at which titles were purchased and not how many copies of those titles were purchased. And our collection's still new, and this is going to have to be monitored over a longer period of time before we get the recipe for the sauce just right. But what we've learned so far, Wei Sheng is going to take it over.
I'm going to be really quick in interest of time for John to present his case. We had a unique opportunity to see how the print monograph purchase pattern change when it's optional. As Eva said, we have only limited data, so it's really hard to draw firm conclusions as to what it is. But from what we saw in the 2017 data, we saw that many selectors voluntarily reduced their purchase of print copies. This varies across different disciplines. Print purchase pattern and usage pattern did not always align, and also usage data of print and ebooks did not demonstrate a strong relationship or much relationship at all. So what's next? We'll continue to monitor this the case in terms of the print purchase. We need data to accumulate over a few years and to see if there are true patterns emerge from how our selectors practice their selection. Also, we hope whatever data we have will help to inform their decisions in the coming years as to which area they need to make adjustments. Okay. This is a complex issue for a large library like us. Traditionally, when we license huge collections of eBooks, we have quite a few selectors very concerned. They still believe, and still believe today, that print is still the option for the user, and that's still what the users want. Some of them were quite indecisive, hoping to see some kind of evidence or confirmation from survey after survey saying, this is what users want. But we're hoping from the data we have here, maybe we're starting to see some kind of evidence that selectors are willing to let go of the print. We won't know until we have much more data to investigate. So in addition to the Taylor and Francis collection, we're going to look at other collections that we bought, e-collections, and to see whether the purchase behavior of our selectors and the user behavior of users of the print collection, how they evolve over time. And it could be for collections for different reading level. For example, for gradual reading level, we have collections like that, and see whether there are differences in terms of how they behave. Okay. So I think this is the ending. We're taking up too much time. Here's John.
Let me just switch over here. See that. And there we go. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks for sticking through the afternoon. If you probably read the description, we're going from UToronto's bigger picture, and now we're going to get kind of down in the weeds. So hang on. Hopefully you'll enjoy being in the weeds. It's always kind of fun. We don't need to see this, so let me scooch on ahead. This URL will pull up everything you're seeing on the screen. So if you have your phone, your tablet, your computer, go ahead and pull it up in case it's hard to see. Sometimes the screen gets a little washed out up here. And also you can play solitaire, do email, and I won't know. I'll think you're looking at the presentation. So you can look really busy and super engaged and, I don't know, watch Netflix or something. So it's just go ncsu.edu/ebook packages. I'll give you just a second. Don't pull it up if you don't want to, but if you do, it's there. All right, I'm going. Any last? You good? Okay. Okay, so this is about me. My name is John Vickery. I work at NC State Libraries in Raleigh. Analytics coordinator and collections and research librarian for social sciences. And what I really do is data analysis work for the library. So things that help us make decisions for collections optimizations, like the talk we're doing now, service point optimizations, we've done some of that work. So I do a lot of programming in Python, SAS, and R, probably more Python and SAS. And then I put all this stuff up on GitHub, so you can go get it later. I'm hoping that folks will use the code that put up there. It's just kind of a starting point as a framework for how you might want to take it and analyze your own ebook packages, or at least get some ideas for some other projects that you're doing, and maybe in some sense kind of take that step away from getting stuck in spreadsheet. People say spreadsheet hell, so whatever, it's a mess sometimes. So so go up, grab this stuff off of GitHub, and poke around, and hopefully it'll be useful to you. Okay, so there's a couple of tools that I'm using for that we use in the framework, and then I'll talk about the data that's actually pulled into it. So the code we're going to look at is Python with pandas. You guys have probably all heard this kind of stuff. Whether or not you program or not, it really doesn't matter. This is kind of like, you're at the gym and there's a cooking show on, and you're trucking along on your treadmill, and the cooking show looks awesome, and they're doing stuff, and you're like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to do that, but it's still fun to watch. So hopefully this is like the cooking show, and then you're going to go home and you're going to make it your own. You're going to do your own deal, and you can make your pancakes, and then whatever, they're going to look great. So don't worry if you've never programmed, you've never used any of this. This is kind of just a, like, let's see what it can do, and you can go do it later if you want. And then definitely get in touch with me. You can email me. You can open an issue on GitHub, and we can go back and forth and kind of dig into it a little more in depth later. Or if you have a colleague that wants to poke into it, just share the slides and stuff with them, and we can talk later. So there's Python. That's a programming language. There's an R version as well. A lot of folks are more comfortable with R. So that's also up on GitHub. We'll see Python today, though. A Jupyter Notebook, that's kind of an environment to work with a bunch of different languages, if you've heard that. It's also, the fun part is that it's shareable. So you can write documentation, you can put your code, and then you can kind of send it off to folks, and everybody can kind of see what you did and see the code and run it all at the same time. So that's a really an interesting way to work with data in a programming environment. And then I get a kick out of using this framework called reveal.js. So you can make slides out of your Jupyter Notebook and just kind of do a little stuff, and you get some nice slides that you can post and share. So I always find it fun to know what people are working with when they do their talk. So that's that. And I want to make sure I don't goof up on time. So for this framework, what it kind of came about was we purchased a lot of eBook packages with end-of-year money. So sort of to the end of the fiscal year, it's like, let's go get the Elsevier package for forensics, psychology, and all of them. And sometimes we'll buy a package in the year, the current front file. Sometimes we'll buy packages that maybe a year or so back, just depending on the money we have. And over the years, we've accumulated a ton of these packages. And so we want to look at how they've performed over time, maybe by publisher. So should we buy that Elsevier math package this year, or should we not? So the whole framework idea of the way we want to look at this kind of started as like a question in our department of like, can we look at how these packages have performed? Everything I've done you could do in Excel if you wanted to. You could do it even better with Excel and Access, totally possible. I just thought this version I think was maybe a little more scalable. So about 3 data sources that I've used and that you would need is a list of packages and when you purchased them. And for us, in our case, we pulled this data out of Serial Solutions. That's where we keep a lot of it. So I'm assuming that's probably similar for at least some of you. The publisher title list for packages. The example we're using, I'm going to show here, is just Elsevier. They have very clean data up on their website. I'm hoping that's the same for other publishers. If you were to say, okay, well, I want to go do Wiley, and Wiley's data is in a different format, you're going to have to change some things. But and then your usage reports. At State, we collect the counter reports on an annual basis, and we've gotten tons of them over the years, and we keep them on a network directory, a network folder, and so we have tons of them. They're all organized by publisher and by year and stuff. But what we want to do is be able to go, and instead of having to manually go grab this file, go grab this file, go grab this file, we keep them relatively organized, and so we can write code against them and just say, okay, I want to go grab all those for Elsevier for these years. So we'll see some of that stuff. Okay, the data files that we just talked about. So the list of packages, that was the Serial Solutions. And the important part that we needed here was to know when you purchased it. Because if you have if you purchase a package in, the Elsevier Math 2015 package, but you didn't have money to purchase it until 2017, that's kind of important in how we work with the usage. The title lists, just if you want to go see them, these were grabbed from Elsevier. They have a lot of data fields in the title list, but I'm only using 5 of the fields, and you can see those there. And the counter reports. Just the regular BR2 reports. That's what we have, so that's what we use. You can think whatever you want about eBook usage reports, but I think the counter reports do good. It's at least a good starting point for us to measure, whether the titles are getting used or not. And okay, here we go. Stop me if you want to, or otherwise we can talk later. Does anyone, let me ask another question. Does anybody work in Python, R, or, all right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we've got a bunch of people. Does anyone like Legos? We got more people, yay, okay. This is the same as Legos, right? Like you have, you get the 3-in-1 creator sets. 3-in-1 creator sets, okay. You got all your Lego pieces and you want to make the airplane or you want to make the tank or the ice cream truck. You just need to get your pieces together in the right spot. All the data projects that we work on, they're almost always the same way. We know the answer we want to, we're trying to ask, or the question we're trying to ask, and we know we have the data. It's just a big pain in the whatever to get all that stuff together. So you'll probably also heard that people say that, some 90-something% of data projects are like the data prep, the data cleaning, and then the analysis is just this quick little part at the end. That's totally true, but it's like, that's kind of the fun part. Like Legos is putting stuff together, and then when you get it, you're like, oh, cool, there's my airplane. You put it aside and you go do something else. So the pretty pictures come at the end and they're relatively quick, but putting all the pieces together, that's what takes the time. And so if you can kind of think about the code as like, let's put this piece together with this piece, and just kind of roll with it for a bit. Oh, okay, so with Python, you import packages, and there we go. You can look at what you do. You just write some words. Say, import this stuff. I said we were using pandas. We're using a little matplotlib. That's a library. If you've used R, it's kind of similar. You got to go get your packages. Tell the program what you want to use. And we're going to try to go quick, too, because we want to leave time for questions. So we needed to go grab that stuff, and we've got a little, you'll see a word there. It says read Excel. So what these words are saying is instead of you having to go click and go get it, you can just tell your program to go get that file that you wanted, and then this is what it looks like. I only needed those first 2 columns, just those package codes and the date, because I'm going to link it together. And now this title list, because we downloaded a bunch, because we've bought a bunch of packages, and I don't want to open up every spreadsheet again and again, so we're going to do a loop. Loops are fun. There's pretty much a colleague at State was talking about programming one time. This is something we say now and again. If you can think about loops and if and then statements, you're done. You can program anything you want. So just remember, you can loop over stuff, and you can say if I want to do this, then go do that. It's the same thing. So in Python, and also in R, you write a loop that starts with for, and you say for this thing, go do all this other stuff. And all I'm telling it here is to go to a folder on the computer and go grab all the title lists that I want, so I can get them all at once. And they go into something called a data frame. It's basically like, it's going to look like a spreadsheet. But of course, because nothing ever comes in perfect, you got to go clean it up. This is where, like, say you were working in Excel, you'd be like, okay, I got to fix this column, and I got to take the dashes out of the ISBN. And okay, so you've got 20 files. Well, I don't want to do it 20 times. Instead, we can just write one line and do it. So we wanted to just keep a couple of the columns, and I wanted to only keep the title lists that match to the ones we've bought, and we want to get the dashes out of the ISBN. So that's what we're doing here. We're just taking our titles data frame, or that spreadsheet where we put in those title lists, and we're just, the first cell there is just keeping the columns we want. The next one is that is in. That's where you're saying, okay, I only want to keep the ones that are in that we've already purchased. And the next is like, okay, let's get rid of the dashes. That's what it looks like now. You got a nice little spreadsheety looking thing. And then we're going to do a merge. That's the same as any database. You've done a merge, and the magic word is merge. You'll see that there. Should have put a big circle around it. Okay, so now the usage data, this is where we've collected all our counter usage reports, and I want to go get them. So guess what we're going to do? Because we got a lot, we're going to go get them. We're going to loop. Yay. All right, so we're just going to grab a couple of the columns, and we're going to save them, and then we're going to merge them. And we're also going to get rid of some dashes, and kind of a quirky thing is said when we bought a package, sometimes your usage reports are a little wonky, and I don't really know why, but I wanted to make sure we weren't counting use that occurred before we purchased the package. For example, did we have a trial going, or why was there, occasionally I noticed there was usage recorded before it was purchased. Maybe somebody got to it through just the Science Direct platform or something. So that's what we're doing there. So this loop gets a little bigger because we're doing more fun stuff in there. I'm not going to talk about all of it, but there's another loop, and it says for this thing, go do this, and I don't know if my little thing will show up there. Okay, so we'll keep going because I want to get to questions, and that's what it looks like. So we've got uses for all year, but finally want to kind of put that into categories and then percentages, and then make some pictures. So we're going to rip over to the pictures. So we are going to total it up, and it looks like that one title, Small Animal Critical Care, had 21,000 uses. That's a lot. And then we want to group them into categories. So we can make a little function. This is the same thing that you would do in an Excel file if you're saying if it looks like this, just change all the ones to one or group them up. And so now we see that Small Animal Critical Care said it's a use of greater than 50. Because I wanted, just to kind of block it up into like, this one's, a group of 2 to 4 uses, a group of 5 to 50, whatever. You could change those to whatever you want. It just seemed like a good idea. Now more cleaning up, that's what we do a lot. So we are getting, I want to take that package name where it says eBook, Computer Science 2015. I want to group that up to just where it says Computer Science. So that would be like a find and replace in Excel. And now we're going to get some counts. So we've got that first package where it's Agriculture, Biological, and Food Sciences from 2014. 4 of the titles were used 0 times. 34 of the titles were used 5 to 50 times. And then we also want to change those into percentages. So we're looking at the same package, and so 59% of the titles were used 5 to 50 times. And all this is because at the end of this project I had in my mind, I was like, okay, I want to see a bar chart, because bar charts are sort of the oldies but goodies. They always work. You can kind of always understand a bar chart. So I'm looking to get my data in a way that I can make a bar chart. And so finally we can get some answers. So all that was the fun part, okay? Now this stuff comes kind of quick. So the question was so which packages aren't actually being used that much? Or, well, not that they're not being used, but which ones have the highest percentage of 0-use titles? So situations where we're buying this package and a chunk of it just isn't getting used. Maybe that's because it's not getting used. Maybe some of those records didn't get loaded properly. So it doesn't necessarily mean the package wasn't valuable. It just means, okay, we'll better go look into this. And so here's a list where I just said, okay, I want to see the top ones that have 0 use. And it's like we've got physics and astronomy, social sciences, psychology. But then I'm thinking also, well, these were stuff we bought in 2017. I know from other work that I've done that stuff kind of has to sit in the catalog a little bit before people have a chance to find it. So I said, okay, maybe I shouldn't really focus on those. I want to only look at the packages that have kind of been there for a while. So we'll just limit to packages from 2012 to 2014, and we'll see if it looks a little different. And it does. And we get, I'm not giving you the full list, but you're looking at, okay, so this forensic security, whatever package, 30% of those titles so far, have 0 uses. Maybe that's not necessarily a package that we want to buy the next fiscal year if we have end-of-year money. Maybe we want to go take a look and say, why is that happening? Likewise with the finance from 2014. And now we can make some bar charts. So we're doing another loop because we want to make up a lot of bar charts. We got a lot of packages, and I don't want to do one for everyone. So we will just pick what we want, and we're going to rename some stuff. And here's our loop again, and we got bar charts. So these are the same packages that we would have seen before. This, if you're looking at the purple, if that can show up back there, That's the percent, and I'm not showing you all the packages, I kind of limited it to just some. This would be the percentage of the titles in that package that have 0 use or greater than 50 uses. So the way we've done it here, I'm like, I want to see a lot of yellow. So the finance one, that's kind of one we might want to look at a little more closely, except the stuff that's been there since 2012 or shortly after, that seems to have pretty good use. A big chunk of it is that green, which is 5 to 50 as we've done it. Here's that vet med. You see lots of yellow. These titles are getting used like crazy. It's because the vet students have defined reading lists and they're required to read like every single thing. They're used for textbooks. I'm not really sure it's smart vet stuff. But so those are really good value for us. Well, depending on how much we paid for it. But either way, they are getting used heavily. Except I have no idea what happened with that one from 2017. It just hasn't had time yet, or that when we bought it, the next semester hadn't started. So here's some computer science, and generally you're going to kind of see the same thing. I was kind of surprised to see that those had relatively good use as well. And I'll show you, we've got 2 more, material science or engineering. And generally, a lot of times we'll look at something and it kind of is a repeat of the same picture. We're going to see the green and the yellow get bigger and the purple get smaller for the older stuff. And let's see, I think we have one more. This is that one when we pulled it up, I'm thinking, for some reason, this particular subject package didn't seem to be performing particularly well. It's relatively recent. Is it the case that their titles aren't of interest to our particular students in physics and astronomy? Maybe we have a relatively small user base in that, or maybe something went wrong. So it's more of a jumping off point. Like, let's take a look and see what's happening. And maybe we don't want to spend that extra $5,000, $6,000, or whatever that is on the physics and astronomy titles. More than likely something else happening. So that is the end of this. And so now, questions, if you have questions for all of us. I'll go sit down.
Hi, thank you so much for this. This was wonderful. I was wondering about, you used the Taylor and Francis guide to find these are the archaeology books and such. So did you just take like their Excel list of like, here's the title, here's the ISBN, it's archaeology? Is that how you built that? Or is there, I'm just wondering, is there some kind of holy grail out there which matches the LC and?
No, there is absolutely no holy grail for that, and it's awful. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna go cry now.
Yeah, if somebody wants to build that, you seem really good at this sort of thing. If you want to build a tool that'll do that for us, but no. So that's the big impetus for using their subject groupings, which our selectors don't like because our selectors use LC classes to do their work. But we had to work with what was available, so yeah, we used their subject categorization. And I should say that's not a Taylor and Francis problem. That's an eBook problem.
That's an everyone problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, in one of our earlier project, what we did was we matched it to print, and the print had LC and it mapped it back. So we had to do some extra work to get it.
I know we're over time. We can take one more question.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. It'll be me. My name is Chris Palzello. I'm the head of collections at Emory. And we're working on a very similar project where we're actually collecting a lot of this data over time, as you are doing, but looking at whether or not ebooks tend to have the same patterns as print books in terms of when they get used, or when the circulation drops off, or when it kind of, whether or not there is some sort of magic thing. Because, of course, there have been tons of studies after 10 years. If it doesn't get checked out in 10 years, then it's probably never going to check out and get checked out and so forth and things like that. We're doing it primarily with eBooks at this point in time. And aggregate, there are a lot of difficulties in doing it. We don't have great dates when we actually added things sometimes and not marking the mark record. We're kind of guessing. I think we bought that in 2015. I'm not sure what the specific date, because the more close you can get to an actual month date, actually the better, because you can get counter date on a monthly basis, and therefore all of that kind of happens. So we're having a lot of challenges. So my colleague of mine, and I think we're going to present at ERNL about this. She's from Bowling Green State, and we're going to look at it on a consortial level as well as another level. So this is, I think we're all kind of working in the same kind of general area. So this is actually very interesting to me. And this is, we may try and focus on aggregators, or we may just do publishers. It's actually kind of easier to do with publishers. So.
I think that's going to be very helpful, because for us, one of the shortcomings which we recognize is from our system. We use Cersei, and for circulation stats, we only have the most recent date a book is circulated. If we knew a book was circulated 10 times historically, but we do not have the date of which
specific dates
10 times occurred.
Exactly.
So that's a huge problem for us. So we kind of only have very limited data to work with. Yeah.
Oh, the vagaries of the ILS, yes.
For the E, we've done a lot of work with our packages over different subject areas to try to understand that tail, and I think we have some sort of standards in place at U of T now for a social sciences and
Okay.
humanities package versus a STEM package, how we expect it to behave when in its life post-acquisition we would expect it to be at peak usage, and what percentage of a collection we would expect to be used by X date post-acquisition.
Sure.
So I think we have good data in place for E, but for
Yeah,
It's kind of limiting as to what we
sure, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.